Thank you for joining us in Finding God in the world of video games. And I'm going to start off by saying that this is going to be a very difficult thing for me to admit here.
Are you sure this is the place to do this then? I mean, if it's that difficult
It's
for
very
you,
difficult.
I feel like you probably should have consulted with me first if it's going to be something.
Well, probably. And I should have. And I wanted to keep silent. I tried. I really did.
I'm really concerned now.
You should be. I have raged against the machine. I have raised my fist at the heavens towards the falling rain, and I have fought valiantly against both the unstoppable force and the unmovable object. I finally reached acceptance on something that I honestly never thought I would, the Microsoft Game Pass.
Oh, alright. I see where you're coming at. Okay, but before we get into that, as a quick note here, okay, we are not sponsored by anyone, including Microsoft. You know, just nobody. So we're just a couple of consumers who like a good deal and a reasonable price.
Yes, both of those things in that order. And as much as I hate to admit it, the Game Pass is the real deal, and it is chock full of such a massive amount of quality titles that honestly I scarcely know where to start. And then with the addition of the EA library, fleshed out this catalog to such an amazing degree, I could probably hold off buying another game until Halo Infinite finally launches and be just fine.
Well, and since Microsoft has committed to bringing the first-party titles to Game Pass, we can even play Infinite through the Game Pass as well. So there is that. You don't really have to buy the game.
Once they actually make the game.
That's also true.
And make it look like a title that actually came out in this console generation, and a little less like the sequel to Brute Force that nobody had asked for or even thought was going to be a thing. But back to my original point. The Microsoft Game Pass is honestly a ridiculously good deal. And anyone who knows me knows that I am a sucker for great deals and reasonable prices. So why did it take so long for me to become a believer in this? So first things first, I prefer my games the old-fashioned. Slowly hand-churned in a vat like butter, lovingly pressed into the shape of a disc or a cartridge, and then hermetically sealed into a plastic game case with that shiny, cellophane wrapper on top. And I enjoy the slow agony of trying to peel back that corner, that first, piece of plastic off of the case, and then unleash the fresh smell of video game directly into my nostrils. And once I have fully absorbed the game's essence through both the sight and the sound, then it's time to unleash that glistening disc and gaze in wonder as prisms of light bounce off of its shiny exterior. After my appreciation for its form has settled, then I carefully hold my disc on the outside, got that little hub there, and I lovingly guide it into the disc tray of my console, gently, like just like a spoonful of rice into my toddler's mouth. There you go. That's a big boy. Begin your install process. I'll just sit here, watch you grow up into a real video game, once all of these pesky updates have fixed you.
Are you good? Are we done? Are you coming back
You
to
don't
us
do that
anytime
when you
soon?
You don't do that when you get it.
That was a little bit
I
ridiculous.
feel like a lot of people are with me on that, but maybe not. Maybe
I mean, I'm with you, but that was a little much.
Okay, maybe it got a little weird. Sorry about it. The point is, I am a strong advocate for console games as a physical medium. And as you can see, I clearly enjoy the physical act of owning my games, maybe to an unhealthy level. Digital libraries of games have something that I've always associated with PC gaming, not my console. So when Microsoft began this Game Pass service with its monthly fees and its fully digital experience, honestly, I kind of raised my nose in the air like the video game purist that I am and politely declined, with a British accent just for effect. Digital game streaming? Heavens no, my lad. My family was raised better than that, old chap. Cheerio.
Okay, but for reals, have you been working on that impression, or was that just something you
No,
made up?
I just
Well, I wouldn't quit my day job for that. That wasn't that great, because I had to remind you to put your nose up and your arms out while you did it.
I don't have that. Impressions are not my strong point. I was just trying something new. We won't go back to that. So suffice to say, I was not a fan of digital gaming, and I stubbornly refused to even consider the options that I was dismissing because I liked the way things currently were. I felt my current gaming experience was complete, just the way it is right now. And honestly, the intrusion of allowing the service into my life, it wasn't just a price point decision. It challenged my gaming lifestyle at its very core and at its fundamental level.
The truth is that we all make a choice of what we want to be a member of and the groups we choose to belong to, and that choice absolutely places us on the path that we walk in life regardless of our original intent. At an early age, we make choices to belong to a variety of activities such as team sports, academic clubs, arts classes, and study groups as we begin to form our opinions of ourselves and our goals and our values and how we fit into the world around us.
As we grow older, these decisions inform where we work, who we end up spending time with, a lot of times who we become romantically entangled with, and how we choose to spend our leisure time. There are costs as well as benefits to belonging to the groups that we've chosen, and those sometimes can seem quite foreign to those who chose a different path. For example, if you started out collecting, say, sports cards at a young age, and you continued that passion into your adulthood, the actual investment, when taken as a lump sum of just a card pack here or there a week,
Right.
would probably seem massive when you add it all up after 40 or 50 years of collecting them. But the value of those cards may have increased 100 times what their original cost was. So to an outsider, they may see that as a waste of time and a massive amount of cost of money over 30 or 40 years spent collecting these little cards. But the owner would feel quite differently. The collection would have a much higher value than the original cost, and over the years the collector would likely have not only found enjoyment and enrichment through the pursuit of that hobby, but they probably forged some lasting friendships and belonging to an accepting community of
Right.
fellow enthusiasts along the way that probably became their friends and in some ways maybe even their family.
Right, exactly. Our faith walk is much the same. There's certainly a massive investment in sacrifices that are made over the course of many, many years that can seem hard to understand to those who are on the outside looking in. But for those of us who are on the inside, this is not only a way of life, it is the way of life. And one of the most critical benefits of belonging to the Lord is the knowledge that He hears and answers our prayers.
This is, in a lot of ways, a membership benefit, so to speak. And for many people, I have found that there's a critical misunderstanding on prayer and how this actually works. Often I'll speak to friends or family who are not followers of Christ either at all or actively, and they'll say phrases like, "I don't understand why God doesn't help me with this problem," or "I prayed, but God didn't do anything." And while I completely understand their disappointment and their frustration, there is a simple and important rule that the Microsoft Game Pass can actually teach us. So the Microsoft Game Pass service has over 100 incredible games to choose from, and I can play them anytime I want, anywhere I want, as long as I belong to the Microsoft Game Pass subscription model. There is a cost associated, and an understanding that I am agreeing to their terms and conditions. As long as I comply with those requirements, they are permitting me access to their catalog of games with no other strings attached. In order to access these games, I do need to be connected online to their service. But make no mistake, the minute I am no longer online and not connected to Xbox Live, my access to those games will also cease to exist. Game Pass didn't suddenly change their rules or their standards and suddenly disappear. They're still there. The only thing that changed was me. I choose to disconnect my Xbox from the internet, or worse, never choose to connect it online at all, the Game Pass literally does nothing for me. A wealth of gaming abundance is sitting right there for me to access, but it's only able to be tapped into if I'm plugged in to the source.
Our ability to receive the answers to our prayers, as well as the power to live this Christian life, is much the same way. Jesus explained the symbiotic relationship between a believer and the Lord as candidly as he could when using the analogy of a tree and its branch in John chapter 15.
In John chapter 15, verses 4 through 8, Jesus goes through the whole "I am the vine, you are the branches" parable. It's an analogy that he's using to demonstrate the importance of being part of him as a branch is connected to a vine. It says, "As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you, unless you abide in me. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire," there's the prayer part, "and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. So there's several very important things to unpack there, but we're going to focus on two specific statements. So first, Christ explains that we are incapable of bearing the fruit consistent with that of a follower of Christ. And so if we are not experiencing the power and victory that we're looking for in life, let me ask the question that I hear every time I call any company's help desk when troubleshooting a technical issue. Have you checked to make sure it's plugged in and turned on?
I can't stand when they ask us
No,
that.
it offends
Drives me
me
nuts.
as just
It
a
really
human
offends
being,
me.
as an adult.
It really does. But as much as that question, offends us every time I hear it, the truth is, when it comes to our walk with Christ, it is the most important question that we can ask. It really, really is. Are we plugged into the Lord in prayer and spending time reading His Word, or are we trying to access His Game Pass without actually plugging ourselves in first?
Exactly. And if we don't, there can be no fruit. There's nothing that's going to come from that. We cannot generate that fruit alone. It requires constant connection to the source. And secondly, let's look at what he says about getting those prayers answered in verse 7. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, then you will ask what you desire, and it will be done for you. So here's a painful and maybe somewhat inconvenient truth. There is a prerequisite to answered prayers. When we cannot get an answer to prayer, or maybe at least the one we're looking for, there is another very simple troubleshooting question we have to ask ourselves. Are we abiding in Christ? Do we belong to His prayer pass? Are we trying to access His library of support tools without actually belonging to the service? We cannot download and play games that we don't own and haven't paid the price for through Microsoft. And a similar lesson exists for all those who seek answers to their prayers.
If we have not subscribed and given our lives to Christ, access to answered prayers is simply unavailable. And more to the point, if we as a believer have stopped abiding in Christ and are off running our lives under our own terms, we're basically a branch that disconnected from the tree and is now complaining that it is no longer being fed.
I personally have been that branch many times in my life. Just a lone
I'm
little
sure
branch
all of us
running
have.
around on my little twig legs, sitting at the base of the tree, screaming and crying for the support that I once had, but failing to see that it is not that the tree does not want to help me. It can't. I chose to disconnect and pursue my own path, and that severs me from the continuing support of the life-giving tree that I once enjoyed. But here's the good news. At any point that we want to, we can plug right back into the tree and experience the support and the growth that a branch enjoys when it is connected to its source. And even better, unlike the costs that are associated with being a Game Pass member, our lifetime membership to this subscription has already been paid for. In Galatians 3:14, it says that Christ paid the price so that the blessing promised to Abraham would come to all the people of the world through Jesus Christ, and we would receive the promised Spirit through faith.
Now, for both believers and unbelievers alike, the secret to answered prayers is simple. Our membership to Christ has been paid for, but we do have to claim that membership and consciously choose to belong to the Lord. And once we have made that choice, we have to remain connected to the tree to see the answers to our prayers materialize.
Branches that run off and start pursuing their own dreams instead of remaining connected to the Lord and His plan for our lives are going to experience the same problem as my Xbox if it decided to grow legs, disconnect from my Wi-Fi, and unplug from the wall. Now, it's still an Xbox, and it still has membership privileges through Game Pass. As a matter of fact, those games that I downloaded, they're still installed on its hard drive, but it has no power or access to those things until it submits to its maker. And the same thing goes with us. We have two choices to make. First, we must choose to belong to the Lord if we want any access to His direction, His provision, and His power. And second, we must remain connected to Him to be in a position to receive answers to our prayers. And this will ensure that our prayers line up with the tree and its plan and purpose, not the other way around. So, my fellow branches, join me as we choose to belong to the all-access pass to the throne room of God. Now, it may be different and foreign to the way we prefer to live our lives. Honestly, that's the way I felt about digital gaming as a concept as well. But choosing to connect to the Game Pass didn't suddenly make my physical games disappear. Truth be told, I still do prefer purchasing physical games when the option exists. But with Game Pass, I now have access to games I probably would have never tried any other way. And I've honestly been buried so deep in some of those games that many of my physical games are now gathering dust because I'm exploring some of these new experiences. Similarly, choosing to follow Christ does not mean that you lose everything about yourself that made you special.
That's right. It simply aligns you with the Maker and allows Him to show you what all of your skills, talents, and desires were truly meant to be used for, unlocking your full potential and enhancing what you already possess. He has an all-access pass to Him that has already been fully paid for. All we have to do is choose to accept it and remain plugged in to enjoy the benefits of it.